Mr. President, I'm going to begin in a moment as soon as I get my marching orders from Tuck here. President?
I've been advised by the parliamentarian that I'm not allowed to respond.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't want to break any rules, Mr. President. Get put on double secret probation. Mr. President, I would like to talk for a few minutes about China. China, as you know, sir, is a wonderful country. It's about 1.4, 1.5 billion people. By comparison, a lot of times you see reported that they're only 1.2 billion, but they're a lot bigger than that. America only has about 320, 330 million folks. By land size, it's about the same size as the United States. A lot of people think they're the biggest country by land in the world, but actually Russia is, as you know. And Canada's number 2, and China, really China's probably number 3 by land size, but we're both close. And I love visiting China. The few times I've been there, the people of China are just, they're wonderful people, very interesting, very smart, very hardworking. Very aspirational. And I say this because when I talk today about China, I want you to understand, Mr. President, and my colleagues in the Senate to understand that I'm not talking about the people of China. The people of China are good people. The Chinese Communist Party, not so much. I really regret having to say this. I would not turn my back on the Chinese Communist Party if they were 2 days dead. I don't want to have a Cold War with China. I would rather see us work together for the common good of the planet Earth. And we've tried, but that hadn't worked out real well. We admitted China to the World Trade Organization on December the 11th, 2001. Now, it wasn't just our decision, but you know better than I do, Mr. President, that China wouldn't have been admitted to the WTO without our support. So we agreed, December 11, 2001. China started cheating December 12th. They steal our intellectual property, not just ours, everyone else in the world. They steal the world's intellectual property. They subsidize substantially their state-owned companies, so other companies throughout the world that don't get state subsidies can't compete with them. For years, they manipulated their currency. They're trying to control the sea lanes of the world. They started in the South China Sea. They're seizing islands that don't belong to them. Next step, they'll try to militarize space. They've used their economic power as a weapon. Our friends and allies in Australia have asked some very reasonable questions about the origins of the coronavirus and the COVID-19. China has responded by saying, we refuse to buy any more of your products. Those are just the facts. Now, the managerial elites told us, by that I mean a lot of the entrenched politicians, the deep thinkers of the world, the academics, many members of the media, the bureaucrats, a lot of the corporate phonies, the ones who think they're smarter and more virtuous than the rest of us in America. They told us, oh, you're wrong about China. Be patient with China. Be patient with them. Free enterprise will change China. China has changed free enterprise. And China is on a glide path to dominance. And you know what the United States Congress has done about it? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Let me say it again. I love the people of China. And I'm talking about the Chinese Communist Party. And I do not want to get into a new Cold War. All I want, and I think all the rest of us want, is for China to play by the rules. Let me give you an example. Every company in the world that goes public would like to list on United States stock exchanges, the over-the-counter market, the S&P, the New York Stock Exchange. We're very efficient. We're excruciatingly transparent. We like investors throughout the world to know what they are buying. We require companies to disclose. And I think our SEC does an extraordinarily able job. I think Chairman Jay Clayton has just been a rock star. We have a rule, as you know, Mr. President, that if you list on our exchanges, you have to file periodic reports. Once again, we want investors to understand what they're investing in. And those reports have to be accurate, or you get in a lot of trouble. One of the things, for example, or one of these reports that companies have to file is an annual audit. But we take it a step further in the United States. There's a board underneath or within the SEC called the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, PCAOB. Really, all that board does, I say all, it's important. That board inspects the audits that the companies file. Not because they think the companies are cheating, though some do, but it's like when we play poker with friends. I play poker with friends. They're my friends, but I cut the cards every single time. And that's what our SEC does through this board. They say, we're going to double check your audits. And everybody has to comply with that rule. American companies, British companies, Malaysian companies, Turkmenistan companies, except one, Chinese companies. They just say no. They just say no, we're not going to do it. And you know what we do about it? Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. And this is not a 2 or 3 month phenomenon. This has gone on for years and years and years. And all of us in the executive branch and, yes, in Congress, we huff and we puff and we strut around and we hold hearings and we issue press releases and then we do nothing. And where I come from, what you allow is what will continue. Now, I have a bill. It's very simple. It says to all the companies out there in the world, including but not limited to China, if you want to list on an American exchange, you have to submit an audit. And the SEC has the right to look at that audit and audit the audit. And if you refuse, not once, not twice, but 3 times, if over a 3-year period, each of those 3 years, the company says you cannot audit by audit, then they can no longer be listed on the American exchanges. It's very, very simple. And once again, I tried to be very fair in this bill, as did my co-author, Senator Chris Van Hollen. We spent a lot of time on this. We don't want to be unfair to Chinese companies. We're not changing the rules. They've just been ignoring the rules. But we're saying, look, we're not going to give you just one chance. We're going to give you 3 chances. If you ignore the SEC request to do for a Chinese or any other company what they can do to all the other companies in the world, and that is audit their audits, and if you ignore the SEC for 3 years, then you got to take your business somewhere else. And you know who that's going to help the most, Mr. President? The investors of America and the investors of the world. Most of the companies that are public companies, I believe, tell the truth, but some of them don't. And this is hard-earned money that people are investing. Mr. President, the name of my bill, strike that, the name of our bill, Senator Chris Van Hollen. The name of our bill is the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act. And as I just explained, it's very simple. For that reason, Mr. President, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs be discharged from further consideration of S-945 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report.
S-945, a bill to amend the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 and so forth, and for other purposes.
Is there objection? Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Kennedy substitute amendment at the desk be considered and agreed to. The bill as amended be considered read a 3rd time and passed, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.